Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good afternoon, everybody. ما میتونم یک سروی بسیار کویک بکنم. پرزنتیشن ما که هست ما با انگلیسی ترتیب کردیم. پرزنتیشن خود. مشوره شما چی است؟ به انگلیسی پیش بریم، پرزنت بکنم یا با دریل پشتو ما میتونم ترجمه بکنم. English? Can I show of hands? Okay, English it is. So again, good afternoon, and I'm glad that you're all here. Good to see you all, and welcome to the second Afghanistan School of Internet Governance 2018. Today, first of all, I would like to thank all the organizers of this really landmark event, which will literally put Afghanistan on the map for internet governance in the world. led by Khalid and his great team. Thanks for having me here today. I'll be presenting on the topic of the role and impact of strategic leadership on internet governance. Why I chose this topic, which I'm not sure if it's completely relevant to what we're having here today, but this was actually a topic of my both MBA research and thesis. And I think this is pretty important when it comes to internet governance and the ICT sector governance and leadership in Afghanistan. Because one of the factors I believe has been constantly ignored, unfortunately, is how important it is to have consistent and effective leadership and management for a sector's development and growth. So I'm going to be presenting about this. Just very briefly about myself. My name is Javid Hamdard, as our colleague introduced me. I've been working in the IT sector of Afghanistan for the past 15, 16 years, since 2002. I've worked with many entities and organizations, including the Afghan government, United Nations, World Bank, USAID, and more. I have a bachelor's degree in information technology from the American University of Afghanistan. I have dual masters in leadership and management. My first master's degree is from the University of Cambria in UK, and my second master's is from the University of Eureka in Switzerland. So, without further ado, I'd like to start with my presentation. And please, just to make this session a little bit interactive and interesting, please feel free to ask questions, have comments and feedback, and let's be a little more interactive and active during this session. So, first of all, I want to put things a little bit in perspective and the journey we have been through. So not everything in Afghanistan is necessarily negative or bad. We have had actually an amazing journey since 2002, since I first returned to Afghanistan and joined the ICT sector of the country. We have had an amazing journey. We have had some great achievements. We have had some very good and tangible milestones achieved. And here is a very quick snapshot of that. So when I came back to Afghanistan in 2002, it's hard to believe there were no telecom operators in Afghanistan. The only 30,000 telephone lines that were active were local, centrally dialed phones that were mostly dysfunctional. The only telecom operator was a state carrier that was dysfunctional. Today, sorry for the typo, it should say 2018. Today we have 7 telecom operators, including 6 MNOs, or mobile network operators, and 1 landline operator. The teledensity, or the number of people out of 100 inhabitants who have access to telecom services is 83 people, which is pretty impressive. 83 out of 100 Afghans literally have access to some form of telecom services, or at least live under the coverage area of telecom services. The telecom service coverage by population, which was not available, so that's why in the third or fourth column I say the growth is incomparable, because you cannot compare apples and oranges, because we had none. So 89% of the population live under the coverage of telecom services in Afghanistan. There are 23 million plus active mobile telecom service subscribers in the country, which is pretty impressive. I still remember the very first days I got my first SIM card from Afghan Wireless. I paid literally $450 for my first SIM card. And I was one of the few privileged ones. And I remember those, Nokia something 31 or 10. It's such an ancient device. I bought for the package, I bought $450. Today, literally, you can get your SIM card for free. If you just pay for the top up inside the SIM card comes for free. And you have options to choose between 7 telecom operators. Actually, I was reading an article, and a research article somewhere. The telecom and the ICT sector in general contributes more than 12% of the overall GDP of the country. So it's a pretty impressive achievement that we should all be proud of. The total number of broadband or 3G subscribers is 5 million and growing, and that's a very good sign for the penetration of internet services, value-added services, as well as internet governance, because you can only govern something that exists and grows. So internet governance is literally based on these facts and figures. Total number of internet users, I personally think it's much higher than 6 million, but since unfortunately, and that's one of the challenges that you can put a pen on, we don't have official statistics about a lot of things. They say it's 6 million plus as of 2018. I think it's much higher than that. I think at least 8 to 9 million Afghans actively use internet services in the country. So this is basically a very quick overview, comparative overview of the sector, how far we have came since 2002. And this was a pretty impressive journey. Is it enough? Did we do everything right? Do we have all the domino pieces in the right places? Maybe not. Is there room for improvement? Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about, and then narrow the topic down to how important it is to have consistent and effective leadership and management for the sector. I'll start, as I said, a little broad, and I want you to please bear with me, but then I'll narrow down to the exact topic. So some of these facts and figures that you see, they actually are used as a baseline and building blocks for internet growth and penetration as well as internet governance. So as you can see, the proportion of individuals using the internet by age in 2017, if I may have your attention here to Asia Pacific, it's 72.3%. Why is this important? Because Afghanistan has one of the youngest countries in the world, with more than 65% of our population below the age of 25. We are automatically inclined towards new technologies, especially internet. So given the right opportunities in the platform, I think we can really have an explosion of internet. There is already demand that access services, and there is an even bigger need for internet governance, for effective internet governance. So the Afghan ICT sector revenue distribution by segment in millions of dollars. If you can see, since this is statistics for 2008 and 2013 comparatively, but if you can see here, the ISPs, so a comparative analysis between the telecom sector automatically tells you the amount of attention and focus on both of these sectors. Of course, I agree, internet could not exist or grow without a basic infrastructure and foundation. But I think we spend too much time, energy, and focus just being focused on telecom services. And there were some good reasons, but we could do better. So if you can see here, in 2013, the revenue in billions of dollars for the ISPs or the data sector was only $91 million. But compare it to the telecom sector, which is $1.1 billion. That should automatically tell you, in perspective, how little focus and attention was paid to internet and internet infrastructure in the country. While another interesting figure would be that the number of telecom operators is 7 and the number of ISPs in the country is 62. We literally have 62 internet service providers. So all combined, actually back in 2013 they were around 50. So all combined we have only $91 million in revenues for ISPs and internet services. On some country card, which is the index card for every country that ITU generates every year, then tells you other correlating factors about the growth and development of ICT sector in general, but also internet in particular. So if you can see education, mobile cellular subscriptions, international bandwidth per internet user, household with computers, active mobile broadband subscriptions, fixed broadband subscriptions, secondary education, tertiary enrollment. These are all factors, enabling factors that enable the growth and development of internet and ICT sector in the country. And now you can respectively correlate these with our, like for example, the secondary enrollment here is relatively higher, but tertiary enrollment and mean years of schooling is relatively lower. Internet users is very low. Active mobile broadband subscriptions is lower. So this all affects the growth and development of internet and data connectivity in the country. Internet penetration rate for men and women. One of the tragedies, unfortunately, one of the problems in Afghanistan is that unfortunately we have forgotten the other half of society. And the other half of society is what? Can you tell me? Asia and Asia Pacific, unfortunately, if you compare the numbers to like the Americas, Europe, the CIS countries, is much lower. But it's even lower in Afghanistan. Because, now we will get to it in a minute, I personally conducted a survey of internet users. You will be surprised to know that more than 90% of all active internet users are men. Only 10% of active internet users are women. So that's a major enabling factor for the growth and development of internet, and they will definitely have a very major and vital role in internet governance and leadership in the country. Mobile broadband demand gap among OIC countries. So if you can see, in Afghanistan we have a broadband gap of 34%. Broadband internet connectivity, or reliable internet connectivity, better internet connectivity, is a major factor in the growth and development of internet or data services in the country. So if you can see, the demand gap is 34%, which I personally, again, in the lack of credible data and stats, I think this gap is much wider. I think at least above 50%. So what do we want, and where do we source our vision? Where do we get our leadership and management vision for the sector? Where is it sourced? Like, no offense, I want to talk a little openly here in this forum, considering that most of you, I assume, would be university students and experts of the sector. So I want to feel comfortable in. So, unfortunately, I'm old enough for this sector. I've been working in this sector for the past 16 years. And unfortunately, one of the problems I've seen with the sector, in addition to other challenges like security, lack of infrastructure, investment, prioritization, is consistent leadership and management in the sector. Unless you have a very solid, sustainable, and more importantly, feasible vision for the sector of the country, especially ICT, which is now one of the most important enabling sectors in the country. Unfortunately, sometimes what happens, we run in circles. And for the past few years at least, we've been running in circles. So I wanna just
tell you where actually our vision is sourced from. What is the vision for the sector that we have? What is the vision, the 5 years later vision, the 10 years later plan? Because as the popular saying goes, if you fail to plan, you're basically planning to fail. So that vision, the best I could find, although it's a little too vague and it was never achieved, is listed first in the PSD, or the Private Sector Development Cluster, as part of the National Development Strategy. If you refer to page 12, it was basically drafted in 2000. The final draft was completed in 2011. And this was the vision. You can take a minute to read it. To make affordable communication services available in every district and village of Afghanistan through enabling market economy so that all Afghans, men and women alike, can use ICT services. Sounds pretty optimistic to me. Unfortunately, when we make these kind of cliche and non-attainable statements as part of our vision, we are automatically lost. As part of this vision, which is really nice, it reads really nice, we should have smaller goals and objectives. How to get there? Has it been achieved? The NDS, or the National Development Strategy, was drafted. The first draft was done in 2004. It was revised several times. This is from 2011. Are we there yet? Does every Afghan have access to reliable telecom services, men and women alike? No. But a more important question is, who's responsible? Who should be held responsible for us not being able to achieve this vision? That's what I call lack of proper leadership. And that's why the role and impact of strategic leadership on the growth and development of the ICT sector. We then drafted something called the E-Afghanistan, which I extensively researched. It's a very, very optimistic and beautifully written and read piece of document. But unfortunately, that's only that, a piece of document in a shelf. The E-Afghanistan confirms the same vision to create a modern and efficient information and telecommunication sector and e-government to enhance the effectiveness, efficiency, and transparency of the public sector, provide for social services, develop a vibrant, pretty optimistic. But organizations, entities, individuals like us should be held responsible at least to some part of this vision. What are we contributing to this vision? And that's the point I'm trying to make here today. The role and impact, because that's one of the major components of this equation. We never consider. Unfortunately, and I hope I'm wrong, I really hope I'm wrong, but we don't have a clear roadmap or vision for the future of this sector that is contributing more than 12% of our budget, national budget, and employing more than 500,000 people and contributing $250 million to the country. We could really, considering all the elements in the equation, the youngest country, centrally located, naturally inclined towards technology, half of our population is not underutilized. All these things should have served best. For the first time, our geography could have served us as a blessing, not a curse. But where is the vision for what do we want to do? And more importantly, the prioritization of the sector. This is the 7-layered model of the E-Afghanistan program. So to begin with, I see a lot of problems here. You know, we have kept jumping back and forward into priorities just by merely global thematics. Like, for example, I drafted the roadmap for the digital TV transition, and I told the leadership back then it wasn't a wise choice to jump to digital TV in Afghanistan. But unfortunately, nobody listened. And instead of having an industry now, we have a broken, dysfunctional system in terms of digital TV. I told them it was a bad idea to jump to satellite communication before having a national internet exchange in the country. But those changing priorities based on global thematics or conferences or events that we attend or our leadership attends is not a very good way. Every country sets their own priorities. And for Afghanistan, it was a wise choice to start with infrastructure development in open licensing regime, but we definitely have made some mistakes along the way. So as part of my dual MBA programs, I conducted a survey. One of the things that I was just talking to my friend and colleague here is the lack of credible research, data, and information that you can actually quote and cite and use as credible, triangulated, verified information. We come to these stages and podiums and we just keep talking and talking and talking, and I very rarely find citable or quotable information or sources. In 2017, as part of my dual MBA program, I conducted an extensive research survey. I conducted an online survey, and then I personally interviewed 154 experts of the industry. If someone is telling me that's a small data sample, unfortunately, we barely have 154 real experts in the ICT sector in the country. So I interviewed almost every one of them. This survey, just to add to its credibility, includes 2 ministers. I won't name them, but a couple of deputy ministers, executives, government officials, politicians, experts, independent consultants, expat consultants, and more. And as part of the survey, I asked several questions. Actually, the number of questions were 17 questions, but I'm just quoting a few of them. And this should give you a picture of where we are, where we actually stand with the state of the ICT sector in Afghanistan, and how important is the role and impact of strategic management and leadership in the sector. So the first question was, how would you rate the strategic management and prioritization of the ICT sector by the Afghan government, including and especially MCIT since 2002? 31% rated it as poor. Sorry for the typo. It's 23% rated as fair, only 31% rated it as good, 15% rated it as very good, and I'm sure you can imagine who are those 15%. Of course, it included government officials. I'm going to be that's as blunt as I can get. But nobody rated it as excellent. And when we talk about strategic management and prioritization, یعنی اولویت بندی سکتور مخابرات، اولویت بندی سکتور دیتا کمیونیکیشن، کدام اولویت ها رو اول باید ما به دست می‌آوردیم و بعداً چی کارا رو باید می‌کردیم. 31% از تمام از این متخصصین که اگه کمباین بکنین پور و bad, it is actually above 53 to 54%. They rated as bad or poor. The second question was, how important was the liberation of the Afghan ICT telecom for the sector's growth and development since 2003? The liberation means when the government actually decided that they will lift the monopoly over telecom services and actually liberalize the licensing regime and awarded the first telecom license to AWCC. وقت که مارکت آزاد ساختن چقدر تاثیر داشت؟ و ما خواهش می است که به عنوان مسئولین و یا متخصصین از سکتور شما به این دیتا و ارقام ربط بتین و متوجه باشین. 38% rated it as important, 38%, the remaining 38% rated it as very important, and 15% extremely important. The liberalization of the market was actually one of the best moves by the Afghan government, which unfortunately they held on to about the data sector, the internet, until recently. They never privatized the fiber optic infrastructure in the country. It was recently opened in 2017. So we shouldn't wonder why the data sector, the internet sector didn't grow compared to the telecom sector. Because when they liberalized the market, it was an explosion of growth and development. But for the internet, Afghan telecom still holds a monopoly over these services. So every ISP has to go and buy their connectivity from Afghan telecom, and the government has monopoly over the one and only data infrastructure, the fiber optic, in the country. So definitely that should tell us something. Question number 3 was, how would you rate the ICT sector's licensing regime since 2002 in regard to both telecom operators and ISPs? And I could go into details of this question, But one of the areas that most people complain about and the experts rated as very poor was ISP licensing. Because unfortunately, internet service providers as small or medium enterprises were actually compared to multi-million-dollar telecom operators. And they were treated the same way as telecom operators. Whereas the government clearly understood that the data sector was underdeveloped. And in other countries, the best choice would have been to completely deregulate the sector or even provide incentives and subsidies to make it grow. But in this case, the Afghan government chose to keep it heavily regulated and licensed and with a lot of tariff and taxation burdens. Why? Because they wanted to have balance in the commercial equation, because the telecom operators were the biggest investors in the country back then. So they couldn't find a perfect balance point, unfortunately. Question number 4, how would you rate the current availability and accessibility of telecom and internet services in Afghanistan? It doesn't really matter what our excellencies, our politicians, our government officials tell us. Every day they sit on a TV set or programs or behind these podiums, and they're like, people are absolutely happy about telecom services. People are absolutely able to access and afford the telecom services. But this is the reality. 31% of these experts said that accessibility and availability is very poor. 31% said fair. Only 31% said good. Nobody rated it as a very good or extremely good. So that is a true reflection of how people feel in terms of availability and accessibility. Actually, ironically, I was presenting at a conference just like this, and a couple of very senior government officials were sitting, and they wouldn't agree with me that we needed to improve telecom services and internet services in the country. So I tricked them. I said, can somebody raise their hand and tell me if they really honestly believe that if there was an emergency in this room right now, this was back in 2011, and they would dial an emergency number and it would ring on the first attempt. There were very few shows of hands, except those first row. Nobody else showed their hands, because that's how unreliable the services are. We have always, unfortunately, maybe it's something cultural or whatever, but we have always emphasized on the quantity of things. 23 million this, 24 million that, 62 ISPs, 7 telecom operators. We never actually emphasize on the quality of services. I was talking to someone, and he was like, but we have just migrated to 3G. We just migrated to 4G. I said, Your Excellency, can you tell me, and yes, he was an excellency. I told him, can you tell me, what is your definition of 3G or 4G, third generation of telecom services or fourth generation? And he was like, obviously, 3G. I'm like, but Your Excellency, 3G has 2 parts, the technology and the service. Just because your mobile shows a 3G logo on the top of your phone doesn't mean that the service is 3G too. It is the same example as you have an 8-inch pipe of water in your house, but you only get half an inch water in it. It doesn't matter if the technology is 3G or 4G. We are still living on very bad internet services. So it's literally, in my opinion, legitimizing, bad quality of service. And we allow all these telecom operators and ISPs to have these propagandas, in my opinion, and bad PR about their services, because they're only responsible for technology, not the service. So 3G has 2 parts. From now on, if you're asked or if you're questioned, 3G is not just a technology, the 3G sign on your mobile. It's also the service. 3G is supposed to be 1 GB data service on the go and mobility. That's what it means. It doesn't mean just the 3G sign. The 4th question I asked was, how would you rate the overall quality of ICT service in the country? It's self-explanatory that 46% rated as fair and 23% as poor. That's a reflection of, that's a reality check there. Question number 6 was, how would you rate the overall performance and capability of the relevant ICT sector entities such as ATRA and MCIT in the management and regulation of the ICT sector in Afghanistan? Well, the numbers speak for themselves. 54% of all these experts, including senior government officials, university professors, experts, researchers, consultants, said they considered it poor. Question number 7, I asked them, how would you rate the overall performance and capability of the MCIT in setting the right strategy and vision for the ICT sector of Afghanistan since 2002? 38% said poor and 31% said fair. And these are experts, by the way, who have been actively engaged in the sector. So, as part of my thesis, I have provided some recommendations, and I have promised the MCIT leadership that I will soon, after I actually publish it by the university, I will provide my thesis as my contribution to the sector. What needs to be done? I provided in my thesis a set of recommendations. First and foremost, I think what we lack is actually an actual feasible and sustainable vision. A responsible vision, not just cliche statements. چیزای کلیشه‌ای و عنوانی نه که کل افغان‌ها باید در 10 سال آینده اینترنت داشته باشن. شما وقتی که یک ویژن می‌سازین بر اساس منابعی که در دست دارین و بر اساس پلان و بر اساس تدابیری که در پیش دارین، بر اساس از یک ویژن ست می‌کنین. You cannot just set a cliche vision and say all 30 million Afghans should be connected to the internet by 2020. That's a bad vision. So we need a realistic, tangible, and feasible vision for the sector. For example, what the vision for me, if they asked me, I would make a very small and tangible vision. I would say have a really functional IXA or internet exchange point in Afghanistan, which is basically essential for the internet growth in a country. Like literally right now, one of the reasons we cannot regulate content, do you remember a memo by the respected ATRA that they sent and they tried to censor or regulate internet? They literally sent a letter to the ISPs and said, ban these websites. And what was their response? No. And then they just retracted their memo because they don't have a central point of content regulation. Now content regulation doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. But even if they wanted to regulate content in Afghanistan, they couldn't. Because they literally have to walk to an ISP with their list of blocked content, 5 categories that they have: pornography, weapon, alcohol, gambling, and I don't know, religious blasphemy. And then they walk to these ISPs and they're like, can you open this website? Is that the way to regulate content in Afghanistan? No. So we need a strategic vision in the first place. Where do you want to be in 10 years? If they asked me, I would be like, Afghanistan should be directly connected to the internet backbone, either in Central Asia, in South Asia, Middle East, or somewhere. We should have like reliable quality of services. If we call it 2G or just GPRS services or whatever, it should at least be functional and reliable. And you don't need to just keep switching from one operator to another, experimenting with which service would be better. So a realistic vision. The second thing that is always lacking, and this is an ironic story, and Khalid Qisayb here, our respected president, would confirm this. I don't know if you were, Khalid Qisayb, working with the Ministry of Information and Culture back then. Lack of coordination between the relevant departments. So right now, when you walk up to a telecom company and they literally have stolen money from you, okay? They steal money from me every month. I'm sorry, no offense. They're like, oh, we didn't know your package. We didn't send you a notification, your package finished, and all your money is gone now because you were on the internet on the go. And you go to ATRA, you go to MCIT, you go to all these places, even someone like me who, like, most of them are my friends, and it's a small community, leave alone an ordinary Afghan. Nobody is held responsible. And every entity, they're like, it's not our job. For my research, I wrote a report back in 2006 and another one in 2012. I literally had to beg people to provide me with public information and data that was locked in shelves in cabinets. I literally had to go beg them, can I please have this public information? How many active telecom subscribers do we have? Today, as of today, you go and check the statistics on the website of MCIT and ATRA. They provide different statistics. Why did we move to digital TV? Do you want to know why? It wasn't because we were in love with advanced technology. It was because we ran out of spectrum frequencies in the country. Why? Because somebody would come and they would be, can I get a license for a TV so I can play pirated guitar all day long, or tambour or tabla? And they were like, absolutely, why not? Because they wanted to show the revenue from the sector higher. And they would like pay us like 100,000 AFs and get the spectrum. You know how precious and invaluable natural spectrum and frequency in a country is? Right now in Kabul, we have no frequency or spectrum for TV. Even if you paid $1 billion, you could not get a TV frequency, and you could not air any content. Why? Because MCIT was like, we are just providing the infrastructure license. So the Ministry of Information and Culture should do a more comprehensive research and decision making. The Ministry of Information and Culture, on the other hand, if those geniuses at MCIT provided them the license, then who are we to reject it? Yes, please, come pay us 12,000 AFs and get your license and play pirated tambour or dambura all day long. We ran out of natural spectrum. That's why they switched to digital TV, with the hope that in digital TV and digital broadcasting, you can use one single spectrum for 8 TV programs, just to cover up that flaw. They never went back and surveyed and actually shut down the TVs that were airing pirated content or bad content or this or that. Literally, no offense, but almost every member of parliament or leader has a TV and a radio. They just air whatever they want. So lack of coordination among the government entities is a major and a key recommendation. Another thing is the prioritization of the ICT sector and disarray between اولویت‌های خود ما باید بفهمیم. 16 سال از عمر سکتور تیر شده تا بال ما یک دانه اینترنت اکسچنج نداریم در مملکت که یک central hub, an internet exchange, or IXA, is a central hub for data interconnectivity. We talk about satellite communications. Do you know we are paying like around $9 million for that broken satellite up there? Why? Because we had to claim the 50 degrees east satellite footprint in the sky. Seriously? We could have rented that footprint for millions of dollars. And guess what? They thought that we could use that satellite for military purposes. They didn't even read the contract that it was a commercial broken satellite with 9 active transponders out of 21. And when they signed the contract and everything was done, they were like, oops, we cannot use it for military purposes. Sorry. Part of the contract says they should have built an Earth station in Afghanistan for the management of a satellite. But for security reasons, it wasn't built. Never. And nobody asks why. The only channel that broadcasts on satellite is a national TV and the Mishrana Jirga TV. And all day long, they broadcast pirated content. They just play a DVD, and literally in the subtitles, you could read this shop and that shop in Peshawar. They are hearing really bad quality Bollywood movies all day long. The Legal and Regulatory Authority, ATRA, I'm so glad, at least in principle, they have agreed that they will make it independent, but that was the aim from the beginning. With the TRB, the Telecom Regulatory Board, that was the predecessor to ATRA, it was supposed to be independent, but it never was independent. And if your regulatory authority is not independent, and they are actually playing into the hands of the market and the telecom operators, you can never have. That is why we don't have consumer protection groups. That's why we don't have consumer quality control networks, etc. And believe me, they didn't even like. I'm sorry to be a critic, a harsh critic of things here, but that's the reality. I want you guys as academics, as students, to understand this and work for improving that. But they literally weren't happy in the beginning. Hopefully, not hopefully, bad choice of words, but they still are not happy with entities like NETPA, like NISPA, like ISOC, they think this is just something that the government should do. So we really need to establish a truly independent regulatory authority in the country. And that is one of the foundational cornerstones for the sector's development, as well as strategic management and development in the country. The other thing is the underdogs, or people who are running small and medium enterprises. They have came here, 62 companies, 64 companies actually have came and invested in the data sector in Afghanistan. But what's happening, unfortunately, the government has subcontracted the entire data sector of the country to one ISP, and then every other ISP is buying their services from that one ISP. So literally there is no competition. And what was the market system in Afghanistan that is mentioned in the national constitution? Please. سیستم بازار در افغانستان باید چی باشه بر اساس قانون اساسی؟ Free trade. In free trade, the government does not actively compete with the sector. And to make it worse, does not monopolize the sector. The telecom operators, as part of their license, they can provide internet services. But the internet service providers cannot provide VoIP or voice over internet telephony services because it's a conflict of interest. Do you know that each Skype call, each WhatsApp call, each Viber call that you make, it's illegal in Afghanistan? At least in principle. So unless we have a really independent regulatory authority and we have respect for these subsectors, I know the telecom sector is a major sector in Afghanistan, telecom operators, but the ISPs are also part of this ecosystem. It is the ISPs who are going to build, grow, and develop the internet and data connectivity sector, not the telecom operators. For a telecom operator, it's much more commercially profitable and a much better choice if you made a long distance voice call than just dial somebody on the Skype. And to make it worse, unfortunately, Afghan Telecom actively competes in the market, which should have been privatized as per their own charter in the first 6 months of operation. And to make it even more worse, they split into two entities. One was not enough. And now, do you know that Afghan Telecom is actually putting band-aids on the bleeding business model of Salam? So Salam, the mobile operator, is actually bleeding left and right. And Afghan Telecom, whatever revenues they get, they put a band-aid on Salam just to make it break even. Why? Because they just wanted to compete. This is something, as somebody who has done research and who has been involved in academic research for years now. Here's the thing. I don't understand our business model. I don't understand our business model for the country, and I don't understand our business model for the ICT sector. For the past 40 years or more, everybody is yelling on TV, on media, everywhere. Afghanistan is an agricultural country. Afghanistan is an agricultural country that is not self-sufficient for its own agriculture. We cannot feed 30% of our population, but we are an agricultural country. We were an agricultural country 4 years ago when everything was based on hard labor. People were, but now all these youngsters, 9 million kids go to school. You think when they graduate with master's and bachelor's degrees in these nice suits and ties, they're going to go and grow wheat? When did we renew our vision and our business model for the country and the ICT sector? Where do you want to be? For the ICT sector, we are just a consumer for the past 16 years. We are not producing anything. How difficult it is to establish a couple of call centers in Afghanistan. The accent and English language skills of Afghans are far superior than Pakistanis, no offense, Indians and Iranians and others, Arabs. And these women literally can serve and be employed at the convenience of their home to work in the ICT sector. How many actual development schools, except for these private initiatives, do we have in the country? The ICT department of Kabul University, By the time they graduate and learn, no offense, I hope Cardano is better. But by the time they graduate with having Windows XP skills, the market is already Windows 7. When they learn Windows 7, it's already Windows 10. When they learn, I don't know, Pascal, DBase, when would our curriculum and education system catch up? And what is our business model? How are we gonna, if it was up to me, I would have asked all these nice people, our allies in the embassies, to just give us 18,000 tier 3 developers in the country. Do you know what is the number of, not all Indians are IT experts. They have only 18,000 full stack developers. 18,000. Can we produce 18,000 developers in Afghanistan? Maybe no. But the market size in this region, do you know it is $20 billion in India just for software development. It's $500 billion in the region. If we just targeted 5% of that revenue in the country and actually invested strategically on the sector, we would be far better 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But I don't see a business model. We are running in circles without a GPS. We think we are making progress, but we are actually running in circles. And every time we are just quoting the progress that we have already made. Okay, fine, we have developed a good infrastructure. Now what? Now we have to transition to content. We have to transition to value-added services. We have to transition to information security. We have to transition to content classification. We cannot just forever be stuck that, oh, we have 7,137 telecom base stations. That doesn't help anybody. Most of us don't even understand what it means. Public data communication. Internet today has empowered more Afghans than any other platform in the history of this country. For the first time ever, millions of Afghans are not only readers of news, they are actively contributing to news. Most of it is gossip and conspiracy theories, but that's okay. It will change. But for the first time ever, have you noticed that politicians, leaders are more inclined towards Facebook than actually attending meetings? Every meeting they attend, they post a picture. Why? Because they have seen the power of data communication and internet and social media and user empowerment. So we cannot take it lightly anymore. We really have to pay attention and focus here. In a few years, it might as well get out of control completely. If it brings the Arab Spring here, good. If it brings Chaos Spring, not so good. Can you believe it? We still don't have data classification. I was invited to the National Security Council a couple of weeks back, and they asked a small group of experts for having a cybersecurity strategy. I was like, forget about cybersecurity strategy, okay? Just start with information classification. Classify what's private, what's secret, what's public, what is top secret, what's confidential, because the president wouldn't have signed a memo and the next minute it's on Facebook. Somebody gets fired, somebody is like dancing at the privacy of their home, and it's already on Facebook. And we can't do anything about it because the law does not have any provisions about information classification. تصنيف معلومات. MCIT finally should reposition itself to be a strategic coordinator of the sector rather than an active competitor in the sector. I don't know, it's something with our officials, they have this control thing in their head. They think if ATRA is gone, if Afghan Telecom is gone, if Salam is gone, then what would we be doing? We have nothing else to do. That's not true. You have a lot of other responsibilities. You can literally play your actual strategic role as a coordinator and facilitator for the sector. You are a policymaker. You're not supposed to be actively competing in the market. So that's why MCIT, and I hope the new leadership will realign themselves and reposition themselves into an actual policy-making position, rather than actively being in the market. And by the way, they're not doing such a good job, even in competing. How many people have Afghan Telecom SIM cards in this room? Show of hands. Perfect. Salam? Okay, a few. You know why? One of the reasons the Salam is widely used because it's cheaper, and the second reason, they have brokered a deal with the insurgents. They're always on, while other networks are shut down during the night. And Salam is always on. So even the insurgents love Salam. I don't know if that's a good thing or you tell me. There is a long list of recommendations, but I think the patience and time of this forum wouldn't allow me. So thank you very much. If Khalaqi Sahib allows, if there is any questions or comments, please. Thank you.